Biden hears from students about what it's like to learn virtually. Jill Biden is there to confuse students about what exactly is a doctor. I'm Dr. Duke, since we're on it. She's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with good old Joe Biden at a recent visit to Virginia, a fifth grade classroom, which showcases just how little was expected of kids forced to attend public school online. And so, yes, here we find ourselves in the unique situation of Joe Biden and Dr. Jill. Now, the reason I call this Dr. Duke, because we needed a hook for the show, right? Yeah, the Duke Pesta show doesn't really impress anybody. Dr. Duke has a nice mellifluous lilt to it. Now, you know, as being a former student of mine, when everybody asks me what they should call me, I'm always Duke. Call me Duke, right? So the titles don't mean much unless you're Dr. Jill Biden. And more doctor than teacher when you look at these plexiglass rooms. Take a look at the setup here and take a listen to the kind of earth-shattering conversation the doctor and the president have with a bunch of school kids in Virginia.
How did you like doing this from home?
It was kind of fun because sometimes when Miss B was like paying attention to something else, you could eat and it was fun.
Yep, there's a lot of kids on teams at one time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what.
Sometimes, like, if she, like, wouldn't let us, like, if we were, like, really tired, then we could, take a little nap.
Yeah,
we can, like, turn
off the camera. I've seen that.
Well, now, of course, first observation is notice how the front row is almost all girls and girls of color, right? That's the first thing we know. And they're the only ones who got to speak. Those are the ones who were addressed directly. And then also notice this, Biden hovering over the plexiglass, wondering how is he going to be able to smell them? How is he going to be able to smell the girls with the mask and the plastic?
Well, and plus it looked like on each desk was their lunch. So that scent was interfering with his ability to properly smell. And they were taking away the kids' lunchtime. Just like the Obamas did. They're continuing the Bidens and the Obamas, ruining kids' lunches since 2008. Did anybody have any corn pop
in their lunch?
I don't
Corn
know.
pop. Well, and of course, what were the kids' responses? What did you think about virtual learning? And the responses were basically, wow, I got to, when people weren't looking, I could eat, I could go to the kitchen, leave my chair, go to the refrigerator. I could, when they called on me and I didn't want to answer a question, I could just pretend that my mic was broken.
Whoops.
So basically, what they liked about it was how they could completely game the system, which should be perfect for a Biden presidency. Well, what else would you? I mean, it's the perfect marriage of form and function.
This is true. Well, and what did Biden learn from this? He didn't know what was going on, and she was just excited to basically act like she was being president right there because she's a doctor. After all.
Biden.
Dr. Jill Biden. And as Joe Biden even said on his official little Twitter, teachers are an extraordinary force for good in our nation. I'm lucky enough to be married to one, a doctor, and have seen firsthand how hard they work for their students. This year, teachers have gone above and beyond to help children learn through the pandemic. So please, thank a teacher.
Which teachers are these? Like the ones in California that refuse to go back? The ones that are taking vacations to Mexico?
I would say maybe not those. There are some great teachers out there, and we always get,
there are. But look, you name any other profession where, and that includes cops, name any other profession where a majority of the people involved go along with the status quo, even though it's destructive. And then we say to him, but there's some good ones out there. Every now and then we get a letter or a comment from somebody out in the audience. Well, Dr. Pester really seems like he doesn't like teachers. No. My point is that we're responsible for the systems we're in part of, right? So if I'm a teacher in a school and I'm trying to do it the right way, covertly, and everything else is going on around me, we've got to stand up for this. Yeah.
I just got an idea based off what you said. Are you saying it's systemic? In the teachers?
The public schools are systemic rot.
Wait, I'm confused. Systemic is only racism racism. That's all I'm been programmed to talk about.
Explain to
systemic
me how,
anything else. I don't understand.
Explain to me how critical race theory being forced down the throat of 5-year-olds isn't systemic racism. Right? Let's play by their rules.
There you go.
If racism is all we're allowed to talk about, let's talk about how racist critical race theory is.
When
you're scapegoating white people, you are making generalizations and stereotypes about white people, where you are projecting onto white people the sins of the world. Yeah, that's pretty much racism.
Yeah.
That's Hitler-grade racism. And my suggestion is to the teachers. Teachers generally get what they want, and I've said this before on the Dr. Duke Show. We've seen teachers, right before the COVID outbreak, teachers were walking out of the classroom in California and Arizona, Oklahoma, for Red for Ed, right? And I get it. If you're listening, you're a good teacher out there, and you're not a communist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a
Thank you.
teacher that's not a communist. And you didn't walk out to get raises, but teachers all across the country were doing it. They abandoned their students for 4, 5, 6 weeks in the middle of the semester to force states to give them big fat raises, and they got them. My question is, I keep hearing there are so many teachers out there who don't go along with this. Well, it seems to me that if 100,000 teachers out of the million, however we've got in this country, if 50,000 teachers all signed a petition saying we're not going to work until you stop making our kids' education about radical left-wing politics, somebody would pay attention to you. If you had 30,000 teachers, or you had in the city of Cleveland or New York or Detroit, if 1,500 teachers walked out to protest the curriculum, to protest the fact that our kids are graduating illiterate, you'd get your way. You wouldn't, but I don't see it. Well, what that tells me, with all due respect to the good teachers out there are so few of you left that you are terrified of doing anything. So please don't take it personally when we call out the teaching profession, because over and above everything else, it has become one complicit, deranged, utterly lockstep they walk with all of this radical progressivism that is replacing education with politics.
There you go. Well said. Now, I want to, I guess, correct myself. I guess those were technically their science projects, but they looked like food on their desks. So it was science projects, because I guess that's what actually the Bidens were there for.
Let me guess.
Because science is all about the Bidens.
Warming, how has impacted the food that they're eating.
That's maybe what some kids did. We all know that science is what the Bidens speak about.
All the time.
But just so everyone's aware, you know, how the kids like the virtual or not like the virtual. Well, it also comes down to, well, how did they perform? Are they actually learning? Whether or not they like virtual or not. And we know that, of course, they're not. The percentage of students who have 2 or more Fs, 2 or more Fs, increased from 6 to 11% from the first quarter this year to the first quarter last year. So when they were online, and this is in Fairfax County, Virginia,
Again.
which this is a 5th grade classroom in Virginia. So it increased from 6% to 11%. And you're going to be like, well, yeah, but that's only like 5%. Well, that's an 83% markup.
Well, but think about how hard it is to fail a public school class.
That's true.
When
as
they
well.
social promote
Two,
everybody.
Twice.
Remember the kid in
2 or more.
Baltimore? 0.013 grade point average,
And
made it through sophomore, junior, and high school.
Thought was going to graduate?
Yeah.
Nope.
This is what. So when you think about 11% failure rates in schools that fail nobody, because failing people gets you less money, right? And speaking of Fs, I could give 2 Fs what Jill Biden thinks about education. She's a PhD in education, which means she's a PhD in a discipline that has no knowledge base. It is not anything. It's all about theory. There is no application there. There is no real core subject matter there. It is fluff. It is fairy tale stuff. Jill, we don't really care.
You know, of course, you can just leave it to the English professors who want to blow up and gas people. Yes, we have another winner out of
We're not speaking ironically here.
No.
This piece of work wants to blow up and gas white people. Okay.
Yes. It's just white people.
What about Jewish people or white people?
Okay, we're getting little intrigue here. So here's what happened. Barnard College. It's Ben Felipe or Philip. I don't really care because he's the one who wants to gas people.
Look at the ironic look on his. He thinks he's Trevor Noah.
Oh,
look at that.
Trevor Noah has way too much hair right now because COVID. He doesn't want to get his hair cut. Anyway,
look at the.
Well, I don't know. This is from.
Is he ironic Hitler? This ironic Hitler, we'll call him. Ben Felipe. All right, Ben.
Yes. Well, he went on a Canadian radio show called Q. Just the letter.
Q.
Maybe we can't spell any more, like the whole word Q or whatever that means. And he was going to talk about his book called Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend. Well, that's intriguing. That just makes me want to be your friend too. I'll be your white friend. And he was talking about racial issues in America. And in this book, he actually wrote about detonating white people while the exits are locked and the air vents are filled with gas.
Well, I mean, what's also
In
really
his book.
disturbing about this, he talks about how he pretends that he wants to be friends with white people. He lures them, he's grooming them. He lures them in. He wants to make them feel like he's open to them.
And this
also,
is,
he can kill them.
Well, yeah, so this is like there are several kinds of English professors, as you are well aware, Dr. Duke. But there's the kind who write fantasy novels and I wouldn't say live in their parents' basement. Usually they have a studio apartment with their cats, and it's usually female, but this time we have a guy. But he even said, when they were talking about his book on this show, he said to imagine basically what would happen if there was a race war and like what side you would fall on. And he thinks, in his mind, in his fantasy world, that it would be all out Game of Thrones style warfare. Okay, so that's what he then wrote in his book. Well, you know what? Let's just listen to his own words.
You say, I'll when this race war hits its crescendo, I'll gather you all into a beautifully decorated room under the pretense of unity. I'll give a speech to civility and all the good times we've shared. I'll smile as we raise our glasses to your good white health while the detonator blinks under the table, knowing the exits are locked and the air vents filled with gas. I mean, that's... I'm a Jewish person, and grandparents survived the Holocaust. I can't tell you how it felt to read that sentiment. And I wanted to say to you that I'm so sorry that your experience of the world made you feel that way and made you feel compelled to write that.
You know, this is why we lost culture, because this woman who is Jewish,
Talia.
who has a right
Her
to
name
be...
is Talia.
Talia, okay.
Just so you know.
This woman who's Jewish has every right to be outraged by this. Any clear-thinking person would be, and she spends her entire time apologizing to him that you feel this way. What did I do to make you feel this way? What could I do to make you feel better? This kid's a punk. I mean, go back to let's take a look at this. This guy's a punk. He's you know what he is? He's a trickster. Back in the days of minstrelsy, right? He's a trickster. He's one of these guys that looks, he's telling you, right? I'm gonna shuck and jive. I'm gonna do my little minstrel dance to the masses. And behind the back, I'm plotting to cut the throats, right? This is exactly what this is. It's a long-standing figure in actually minority communities called the trickster, right? He's got that disarming look. He's a professor. Well, because being a professor means you've got to be an intellect, right? Well, Jill Biden.
This is true.
She's doctor.
He is also a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. Yes. And if you know anything about D&D,
it's all white.
Talk
about the whitest game in the history of games.
Oh, you would know? You play?
Never did. No.
I don't. I know it's an online.
Did you?
No. I just know it's D&D.
By the time it was a little before my time, right? So
was
I was between Dungeons and Dragons and video games. So there's a 10-year period between those two things, and I never did either one of them, to tell you the truth. But this guy, now again, and let's be serious, but go back and show this. First of all, look at there he is, right? You've got the black character on the top of the image there on his book. You got the black guy with his hands on his hips. You got the white guy reaching across his shoulder, apparently going to tongue kiss him. And I assume that in the black dude's other hand is what, a knife? Is this the kiss of Judas here?
Well, it's in Canada, not England.
I can't get over the look on his face, right? Look at
Clearly.
me. I'm a little attention whore. Somehow, without being qualified for anything, I'm now a professor, and I'm going to talk about how I'm going to gas you and blow you up because nothing's going to happen to me. No dean, no chancellor is going to have the guts. No white administrator is going to have the testicular fortitude to say anything about this except we support free speech when black people are speaking. That's about it.
Most importantly, he loves all his white friends. Well, if you paid attention to any of the news, not on the mainstream networks, but on actual news sources, you know that Florida is doing Florida-like things with Governor Ron DeSantis. So there's a new bill awaiting his signature, and it would allow students to record everything that professors say. And basically the professors wouldn't need to know that they were doing it. And so naturally, the faculty's real mad. They real mad about this. So supporters of the bill say it would actually make it easier for students to launch free speech complaints, as it would essentially go around Florida's two-party consent law. So two-party consent, if I was in a room and I wanted to record Dr. Duke, I'd have to say, Dr. Duke, you have to know I'm recording you, and I know, so we're two-party. If it's one party, I could just record him without him knowing. So that's the two-party consent law. And Florida has it, but it would circumvent that. And that, however, is the basis of the complaints against the bill.
Now, look, again, as a university professor, I don't like this.
Yep.
Even though it would benefit me immensely if
It
all
actually
of the
would.
radical liberal professors were outed, because I get outed all the time. I've had, when I say anything remotely conservative, right, or that challenges liberal narratives, somebody's off filing a Title IX complaint in the chancellor's office, right? When kids hear speech that's not liberal enough, they complain. But when they hear speech that is not conservative, that is anti-conservative, that is insanely intolerant of conservative ideas, nobody ever does anything. So what always bothers me about this is that, first of all, it should not be necessary. But the only reason, American faculty, that this is being considered is because whether you know it or not, you are too one-sidedly partial. If you like to think that you're neutral, all my colleagues in the English department say things like, our department doesn't do this, our department's not. You got a communist. You got a self-prescribed communist teaching in the English department. And he goes around bragging about being a communist, and no one cares. The minute they find out that I'm a conservative, they start boycotting classes. So
This didn't actually happen. Yep.
Yeah, it is actually happening. And so you have a situation where the left so dominates monolithically the college campuses that even if you think you're not being one-sided, you are. And that's why this is the thing that gets me. For supposedly smart people, the faculty on college campuses can't figure out or refuse to acknowledge the fact that their own bias is what drives laws like this. If you want to fix this, don't get mad at Ron DeSantis. Start being more open-minded in your classrooms, number one, and start hiring for intellectual diversity as opposed to simply more and more communists all in a row, so you can brag about you're the most red faculty it's this side of Berkeley. What's the purpose of this?
So I'm going to get to all the details in the bill, because it's not like these students can just record and then put it up wherever they want. There are details in the bill according to it. But first I want to hear from the United Faculty of Florida, that's their name, United Faculty of Florida, the president, Karen Morian.
Are we gonna, as faculty or as graduate assistants, have to film our classes in their entirety to have an unedited version for our own defense? How is that going to encourage anyone to speak up and speak out in class? It's hard enough to engage students in this political climate in any kind of discussion. And I'd hate to quell that development when you watch people work their way through a problem.
The one-sided arrogance of what she's saying. So how we're the victims, right? Are we going to have to record our whole classrooms to be able to defend yourself? Are you not asking yourself why this is? Why this is? Because you've got kids by the tens of thousands sitting there who aren't liberals, who don't agree with your worldview, who feel like you have marginalized them. And there is proof in every state, in almost every college out there, that this goes on. And so your response is, poor, pitiful me. Not even
great song.
You can't, little Linda.
No. Jody Messina.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Linda Ronstadt did a very good version of that.
I'll take
way
the newer
before your
version.
time. But, so she can't even acknowledge. Can't even possibly acknowledge what we innocent professors who are neutrally teaching our classes, why we would have to protect her. And because she's right about the problem. Anybody, and this is why I'm against it, anybody can record a 45-second commentary out of a 20-minute lecture and make you look like an idiot. It's too easy to abuse this. Meanwhile, you got these kids sitting there who are being lectured, talked down to, whose worldview is being peed all over by these professors. And they want to know why we have these laws coming down the road.
Well, and I want to get to the details very quickly. You would not be able to post a recorded lecture on the internet, but only use it as part of a complaint to the university. So it's meant to, supposedly, you would tape them and then you hold on to it until you actually file something or do some official complaint.
But again, then who's going to hear it? The universe, the same liberals, then will hear it.
If the video is posted online without someone's consent, the poster can face a fine of up to $200,000. So if a professor or teacher then were to say something a student considers out of line, politically, racially, whatever, or if they prohibited a student from expressing an opposing opinion, the student would be allowed to then record for evidence. So supposedly this is all going to be like hush hush behind closed doors, but that you're allowed to.
The problem is that most professors aren't in your face squashing your free speech every second of the classroom. So you literally would have to go, even if you've got a complete horrible professor who spends half his time railing against the left or Donald Trump, you'd still have to record the whole class. Because, there's the time you're giving quizzes or the time you're talking about what the assignment is for tomorrow. So, again, you're going to have to, beginning to end, record these classes to be able to catch them. It's time for some real education on instant classics, and more I'm gravitating to finding really smart, really important historical figures are complete smartasses and know how to satirize idiots. And so today, we've got one of the giants of this, François-Marie Arouet, better known as Voltaire. That's cool. You're already got a name, François-Marie Arouet, and you become Voltaire. It almost sounds like the name itself suggests a charge of lightning. It's his nom de plume. This guy is a radical thinker. He was an atheist for much of his life, but he believed in it, but he was also a deist. Even though he denied certain aspects of God, he didn't deny God entirely. He made fun of all the power brokers of his day. That included the Catholic Church, that included religion. But boy, what a remarkably sensitive and look at him as if it's possible. We did Mark Twain a couple weeks ago, and as good as Mark Twain was, this guy's better. This guy's a better, bigger, more challenging intellect than Twain had. And so let's begin by looking at some of these quotes, just some random quotes from Voltaire. He says, "A state can be no better than the citizens of which it is composed. Our labor now is not to mold states, but to make citizens." And my God, this is 200 years, this is almost 300 years ago. And you have a guy who's pointed out the problem in America today. We are too busy molding the state, the collective state. We are too busy forcing kids to conform to statist models of education. Wouldn't it be better for freedom and liberty? The answer, of course, is yes. If we simply made citizens, not creatures of the state. You can see that hundreds of years later, Voltaire understood exactly what we were going through. How about this one? "May God defend me from my friends. I can defend myself from my enemies." You know who hates you. It's the people who think that like you, that don't. Those ones you better be on guard for. That's a piece of wisdom for you. "Men are equal. It is not birth, but virtue that makes the difference." How's this for the question of equality versus equity? He's exactly right. We are all equal in the eyes of God. We are all equal in the law, under the law. It is not our birth or our skin color or what junk we have in our pants that determines what we are. It's virtue. What do we do with what we have? And how about this? "I cannot imagine how the clockwork of the universe can exist without a clockmaker." For one of history's great atheists, let that sink in for a moment. I cannot imagine how the clockwork of the universe, how the whole vast universe ticks, ticks, ticks like a fine machine, and then not imagine someone who had made that clock. And finally, "It is not inequality which is the real misfortune. It is dependence." How's that for a glaring attack on socialism before the first socialism raised his head? It is not inequality that we suffer from. That's what the social justice warriors say. It is dependence on one overriding government. Unfortunately, the socialists won't learn until it's too late.
All right, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure you allow for notifications. And if you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation allows us to keep bringing you all of these great stories every single day. Now simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, we're going to ship you our signature tumbler as just a little thank you. Before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, we're giving a shout out to Sir from Castalia. There's a Castalia, Ohio. I don't even know if it's Castalia or Castalia. Either way, thank you for supporting the show.
To Sir, with love. And that's our show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.